On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to dive into last year's NBA draft by recapping what we thought about Josh Giddey this time a year ago and Tre Mann, and then dive into the Final Four and preview the 2022 draft class and how the season will end for the Thunder and what place they might fall on tankathon.com with our good friend Richard Stayman at Mavs Draft on Twitter. Let's get into the show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're going to look back on our 2021 NBA draft profiles for Josh Giddey and Tre Mann with our draft expert, Richard Stayman, as well as talk about the future of the Thunder this season and where they might fall in these last 6 games or so on the Tankathon standings. But Richard, another week. We're doing it a bit later this week than normal, but it's better late than never. Glad to have you back again for some more draft talk.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I don't know how I made it back after you threw me under the bus for my statements about Theo Maledon from the last time I was on here. So I'll be careful what I say because you have a good track record of throwing me under the bus.
I think if you go back and listen, I've said that phrase that I've said. Richard Stayman says that Theo Maledon's the worst player in the NBA. I think I've said that every podcast since you said that, including yesterday. So you can go back and listen to that one as well. But this is real. Richard is very apologetic about that, Thunder fans. He even brought it up during our NBA conference call every week on Wednesday. So he does apologize for criticizing Theo Maledon, but I do think it was a fair criticism, and you're wearing the Magic shirt right now. So this year, the Thunder, the Magic, they're all battling for the worst overall record. The Magic right now control it, but the Thunder are just 2.5 games back. If you had to bet right now, where does this all shake out? Do the Thunder stay at 4? Do they move up? Do the Magic keep 1? Do they move down? What's going to happen here for the final 6 games?
All I'm confident in is that, Portland's schedule, goodness. They have the craziest tank. They got San Antonio, then they have they have them twice. They have them twice this weekend. Oklahoma City on Tuesday, and then they go to New Orleans, Dallas, and then versus Utah. They're not winning any of those last 3 games. That Oklahoma City game, as I'm sure you're aware, will be big, but Portland's going to play a big role in this because of who they play. They've had a crazy tank schedule. They played Houston twice, but Orlando is playing all playoff teams. So I think they're ending the rest of their next 5 games. Toronto, New York, 4 of the 5 are playoff. New York, Cleveland, Charlotte, and Miami. None of those are winnable games as long as they're playing the same roster they rolled out the last week and a half.
I think that Orlando's locked in at the top 3 at the worst. Probably going to be the best odds to get the top overall pick at that number 1 slot. And I do still think the Thunder are locked into no worse than 4 because even as Portland can go on this huge run, they're 7.5 games back of Orlando. The Thunder are 2.5 games back of Orlando. But of course, maybe things can change in that regard. I think that the Thunder, though, are pretty secure at 4. And we've talked about what that means for this specific draft. And with the Magic leaping into the top 3, let's just assume the top 3 goes Orlando, Houston, Detroit, and then Oklahoma City. Do any of those 3 teams make a surprise pick to where one of Jabari, Paolo, or Chet is available?
Man, if any of them, it's Detroit. Orlando and Houston are – I think they could take Ivy. And I do think there's a very real possibility. It really does depend. I think, I thought RJ Barrett was for sure going number 2 in 2019. John Morant went up. Guards always get the benefit of the doubt. And obviously, that was the right play. But guards will always get the benefit of the doubt. I would be very surprised if the consensus top 3 goes to the top 3 in the draft. It's going to be one of those teams. It's not Orlando. I would probably say Detroit.
I want to do a couple spins here. And as the draft expert that knows this class inside and out, you grade on a scale of 1 to 10 how good or bad these results would be for the Thunder. So our first spin has the Thunder at pick 3. So they move up one slot. They have pick 3, and then they also have pick 15 from the Clippers and pick 30 from the Suns. 1 to 10, what's your ranking for that?
It's a solid 8. It's nothing to like write home about, but if you hit 1 through 3, the odds of hitting that are much higher, obviously, than any of the other picks. But if you hit at least one of 15 and 30, and you're obviously more likely to hit at 15, I think you're getting a pretty good draft there. So I think that's a good chance there.
Yeah, I go 8.5 here because I think that giving Sam Presti the option of one of Chet, Jabari, or Paulo is fantastic. And then, of course, whatever you can do with pick 15 and 30, that's kind of up in the air still in this draft. But I think that any result that has the Thunder falling in the top 3 is a great result for the Thunder. But our next spin, oh gosh. Our next spin has the Thunder at 6. And don't celebrate, Richard, because the Magic are at 5.
Oh.
And Detroit's at 4 and Houston's at 3. So every tanking team gets punished. Portland leaps up 4 spots, and the Charlotte Hornets leap up 13 spots and go to the top overall pick. In my opinion, having picked 6, 15, and 30 for the Thunder would be a -5. What do you think as somebody who's kind of, again, more in tune with this draft class?
Look, I'm not just saying this because I'm wearing a Magic shirt. I'm a Magic fan, all of it. And then I'm a frequent guest on this podcast. I'm sorry. I hope to God this is not the year the 14 jumps. That is a 0 out of 10 for all parties. That is the Adam Silver result.
That would just be terrible. And our last spin here. The Thunder stay at 4. The Spurs leap up 7. Orlando drops 1. Houston drops 1. So it's San Antonio, Orlando, Houston, and Oklahoma City. Now, with these surprise teams that leap up for San Antonio, if they get the stroke of luck and San Antonio leaps up 7 spots, they're now a team that we don't really discuss much when we talk about Paulo, Chet, and Jabari Smith, obviously. What would they do at pick 1? They have the pick of the entire board. What would they even need? What would they even look for? Would they trade down?
Well, first of all, how dare you put a Southwest Division rival into the number 1 pick? I think it's Chet. I don't think it's really much consideration. I think he can play. I've talked about this actually. I was on a Twitter Spaces with some Spurs people, and I think Chet's best fit very well could be San Antonio. You have the true, we always hear like, how's he going to guard Embiid? How's he going to guard this guy? Pirtle can actually kind of do that. So what's your next question with that? Like for those people who are like, oh, Chet can't do this. Ta-da, you just found him a perfect home. So you let him play to all his strengths. And I mean, Greg Popovich coaching Chet Holmgren, a guy who just loves the game and has incredible basketball IQ, seems like a match made in heaven. I'm sorry for the Thunder, though.
Yeah, they stay right at 4. They don't move up or down. And meanwhile, you have the luck of San Antonio going up 7. It brings up the conversation we have almost weekly right now of just the likelihood of being at pick 4 for the Thunder. And what does that mean if you do get consistent top 3? Do you just take Jaden Ivey and figure it out? Now, you've done a really good job to this point. I'm going to pat you on the back of talking me into Jaden Ivey, because I started out before you and I got together of just like, I don't know how this fits. I wouldn't want Jaden Ivey. I just trade down. I'd do something else. But the more you've talked about Jaden Ivey, and we're going to get into his podcast, it's just all about Jaden Ivey. But what would it be at pick 4? Would it be Jaden Ivey, or would you see them going AJ Griffin, who's a player that a lot of Thunder fans like right now for that pick? What would you do if you're Sam Presti at pick 4?
Yeah, I think Jaden Ivey fits well there. I can't remember. I think it was us we talked about on this one where it's like, the 3-guard lineup, only a few teams can actually pull that off successfully with 3 true slashing kind of shoot first guys. Not that Josh Giddey isn't shoot first, and neither really is SGA, but the balance is like you want him to score a little bit more than play make. The same thing is kind of true of Jaden Ivey. I'd rather him be scoring. Giddey can be that true facilitator, but you look at their size. Orlando, for example, can't pull this off because Jaden Ivey's around 6'3", 6'4". Jalen Suggs is 6'4". Markelle Fultz is 6'4". Cole Anthony's 6'2", 6'3". They can never pull that off. Oklahoma City, though, having a 6'9" point guard, what is SGA, 6'5", give or take an inch, 6'6", give or take an inch. And then Jaden Ivey being the smallest one at 6'4", it actually works, and all their play styles can complement each other since we've seen SGA can at least somewhat, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm horribly off base, but he can play off ball. So I don't see how that's a bad fit at all.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. SGA played off ball his first year in Oklahoma City, did it fantastic as the Thunder ran that 3-guard lineup of Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, SGA to close out games, and SGA was awesome off ball. The question is, does he want to do that? And that evolves into a different conversation. Obviously, he had the GQ article saying he wants to be the best point guard of all time. Can't really do that without playing point guard. So we'll just have to see what the preference is for SGA on that front. But our next segment is going to be very fun because you're going to get to laugh at me and Richard Stamen. We're going to go back and look at our draft profiles for Tre Mann and Josh Giddey, see what we got right, what we got wrong, and what we wish we could go back and change from a year ago at this time, all coming up on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. But first, I want to say right now, but our good friends over at BetOnline.net. After months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four and will determine this year's national champion in the coming weeks. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all betting needs and sports info, from the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it. BetOnline remains the best spot for your latest sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is continued to be your source for wagering on sports, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head on over right now to the website, betonline.net, where the game starts. And I want to tell you how easy it is, folks. You go to your URL, you type in betonline.net. You're going to pop up their sports book. Whenever you do that, you can go down to the basketball tab. Let's bet on the NCAA tournament. You go to NCAA, you go to March Madness. Right now, you're looking at the most outstanding player in the March Madness props. And Richard, who would you pick to be the tournament's most outstanding player?
I think it's got to be Paolo Banchero. Duke winning it, so that's my bet.
And that would be plus 250. I gave the sneaky pick of Remy Martin, who's plus 900.
Of course,
or Christian Braun, who's plus 2,000. So Christian Braun and then Remy Martin, I think, are two great value picks. Obviously, Richard's not a big Remy Martin fan, but when he drops 30 in the Final Four and gives his best Mario Chalmers impression to lead Kansas to a national title, we're all going to think differently about Remy Martin. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Your next listen, go check out the Locked On Now podcast, another recap show of every NBA game from the night before. Richard, we're back. And every year we get geared up for the draft now in Bricktown, and we start to look at the series we do. So on Locked On Thunder, we do a player profile and projection for every single draft prospect. We go through kind of their basic information, and then we go through kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are and where they fit with the Thunder and kind of what their role is. And I have my sheet up on both Josh Giddey and Tre Mann. You do as well. Oh, goodness. You were shaking your head before the break, and I'm just heartbroken on what went through my mind for these two young players. But Richard, let's start with the fans making fun of us. What did you get the most wrong in your evaluation?
So I'll take a victory lap first because I'd rather start on the high note. I got Tre Mann right, I think. I put him as 10th overall on my board. Like I pegged his skill set. Like I will very much boast on that. What I got wrong was everything else about Giddey. Like my scouting report, I think was pretty good. I just horribly overemphasized things like he's not a great athlete. He has short arms, turnovers. I don't know if he'll finish against bigs very well, and like his shooting and all that, and defense. I thought all of that stuff would matter, but when you're 6'9", like a lot of it gets negated. And when you have a ridiculous basketball IQ, again, a lot of it gets negated. So trying to learn from my mistakes going forward. But yeah, go ahead and clown me because I had him number 18 on my board, and that is nowhere near close.
My clownage comes at Tre Mann, who I had 30 on my board, which was obviously terrible. However,
hold on. However, though, that wasn't uncommon. Most people on draft Twitter actually had him second round. So like, let's be real. That's actually not bad. I was way too high, I thought. So go on though.
I appreciate the moral support. I did kind of peg his NBA ceiling, I think. And we can start with this. I think that the tippity top ceiling for a Tre Mann would be a CJ McCollum type of player. And his realistic ceiling would be a 6th man of the year perennially. And then his floor is a 10th man. I think that that's pretty accurate for his ceiling. What do you think that Tre Mann's ceiling is back then and now?
Yeah. So I'm going to have to pull up his stats. Actually, do you have him up right now to save me a second?
For his rookie season so far?
Yeah. So what I had, I'll let you, as I'm talking, I'll let you pull them up. But my high end, I do, the way I do my scouting reports is I do kind of like a middle, low, high end. And I do expected roll, unplayable, like the worst case scenario, and exceeds expectations if scenario. It's basically just a giant what if on all three. But the expected roll was, starting guard, pick and roll, shot creation, and deep range. The ceiling, though, that I put was if the jump shot is consistently near 40% from three and the turnovers drop from college, he's going to be a really strong 3-level scorer. What's he shooting from three this year?
From three, he's shooting 36%.
Yeah, that's going up. So I don't think he's anywhere near a ceiling. That number could very well, most guys don't peak their rookie year. So I would assume that number is going up.
And just one turnover per game. Obviously, before the hamstring injury, he was doing a lot more, getting a lot more usage down the stretch with the injury. So I think that with Tre Mann, my big board was wrong, but my ceiling and floor of him was pretty accurate. That he could be a CJ McCollum type of all-star a couple years, but more likely going to be a perennial 6-man of the year. And then he's obviously going to have a spot in a rotation and kind of being a very important player moving forward. So I think that with Tre Mann, the spots might be a bit wacky, 10 to 30, but in general, we kind of pegged him right. We just kind of had it wrong on our board, so to say. So I'm interested in that. I will say I've been more impressed with his, finishing at the rim than I was. That was one of my biggest knocks on him coming into the draft and into the year. Obviously has those fantastic dunks that are going to be highlighted everywhere, but I think that you saw some signs that he could get a lot better in that area. At the rim this year, though, he shot 48%. Going back to his college numbers, I think it was 46 or something like that, to be fairly low at the rim. So we'll see. We'll see who's in the 45th percentile at the rim in college. So it was really bad in college. He's obviously trending upwards in that way. But Josh Giddey is where I find to be the most interesting for the Thunder, because on my board I had him 12, which I think at the time was not crazy to have him at pick 12.
That was the norm. That was probably the consensus spot.
And my strengths and weaknesses, my only weaknesses was that he cannot hit shots off the dribble. He will need to overhaul his shooting mechanics this summer, which he admitted to this season. He said that this summer he's going to change his jump shot. And I said that he struggles to play on-ball defense. That was my weaknesses about Josh Giddey, and I think that that's fairly accurate. I think that that's kind of what he struggles to do at this point. And he's not a great shooter. He needs to change his jump shot, and he struggles to play on-ball defense. His defense was a little bit better than I thought it would be, but still has a long ways to go, although the Thunder have a reputation, so to say, of improving defense.
Yeah, and for me, the defense was the biggest issue. I had, he has weak hips on defense. He can't really turn his hips very well. He's often out of stance. He's just not that athletic in the short arms. I thought that horrible combination would make him such a glaring defender. But it's funny in my the way I argue for other current NBA players that have those same descriptions, like Trae Young, for example. There's so many times I'm like, who cares if his defense is terrible? He's great offensively. And for whatever reason, I just didn't apply that logic to Josh Giddey. Because on my strengths, I put, he has great feel for the game. The cutting shows a lot of it. Really, he knows where to be on defense. The pick and roll feel is just unbelievable how he uses screens. He has a tight handle. He has great rebounding, the vision. And I was like, no, but the defense is pretty bad. So I don't know what I was thinking with that. It was just a bit miscalculation on my end, but yeah, that was a big miss on the defense for me.
Yeah, I think that the defense for me weighed him way down. And then also I'm always scared to have to reinvent a jump shot. But the strengths, again, we were on the same page. Great playmaker, plus vision, plus passing on the pocket passes, chest passes, bounce passes, outlet passes, every pass you can make. Great rebounder for his size. He's a nice team defender, I thought, but not an on-ball defender individually in an ISO situation, which you're going to see more of in the NBA. And then I loved his rim finishing, which has been proven to be great this year at the rim with those floaters that he has. And then I did love that his pace and able to control the game as a leader at 18 was massive. What I think I got the most wrong about Josh Giddey was his ceiling and his floor. I put his top ceiling at 6-man of the year, and there were a few comments on that podcast that were saying that Josh Giddey could be the next Luka Doncic. Now, is he going to be the next Luka? No, obviously not. No one's going to be the next Luka. That's insane. However, is he going to be better than a 6-man? I would say so. What do you have your ceiling at for Josh Giddey, and how would you change it now, having seen a year of him?
Yeah, a lot of it came down to the finishing and shooting, which I think really underestimated a lot of what he said. So I'll kind of just read the same thing. that I read on my last one. So the expected role I put as a starting point guard that serves as a floor general, which, by the way, like, this is square one of where I got it wrong. Like, floor general starting point guard in the NBA is a top probably 12 player from their draft, no matter what the draft is, even in the 2021 draft or in like the 2001 draft, like, or the 2000 draft. Like, not, it is a very, very safe outcome. And I don't know what I was thinking to have him so low, but the floor, I was like, oh, his lack of jump shooting, athleticism, and defense makes him difficult to play in the NBA, whatever. Like, if that happens, his basketball IQ can, outweigh his lack of scoring, and, he may not be able to earn minutes. But the top end was pretty much if his jump shooting develops, and he had a lethal scoop shot in Australia, which I don't know. How much have you seen that in the NBA? Because that was something I was like, if he gets a lethal weapon, he'll never be at worst, he'll be like an average finisher at the rim, which is good.
He's pulled out that floater a ton more than his scoop shot, but we have seen instances of that scoop shot in the NBA, and it's always, of course, reminiscent of SGA, who also utilizes that scoop shot at a high clip, and that's kind of his go-to move around the rim, which he's so great at finishing around the rim. So we have seen it some in the NBA with the Thunder, but it's typically been that floater that's been his go-to move.
Gotcha. Yeah, that scoop is what I mean. I still kind of think that'll be a big thing for him if he can learn from SGA, but I don't know if I think I miscalculated there. I don't think that's exactly what it would be. Really, the 3-point percentage, I think, would do wonders because, I mean, let's be real. The passing and floor general status are already at ceiling level, and it's something where it's like, sure, he could get better, but that's pretty much going to be ironing out his ceiling more than getting to his ceiling.
And you and I are both big Jeremiah Robinson-Earl fans and Aaron Wiggins fans, but they kind of are what they are at this point. We're talking about Josh Giddey and Tre Mann right now because I want to pose the question, having studied them before the draft, having watched them for a full season, did the Thunder find a blue chip player in the 2021 class?
I do think Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is going to stick. Who was the other guy they got in the second round again? I know they had Aaron Wiggins. It was Wiggins. I couldn't remember if he was undrafted. Hey, I mean, the fact that I think they hit on 4 players really means a lot. I think Giddey's going to be he's got the potential to be a cornerstone. Honestly, if I could flip, I would flip at this point who I would have as being better between him and Tre Mann, Giddey and Mann, excuse me. But did they get necessarily a franchise changer? Tough to say. I think it depends on what happens in the next draft. I think I think Giddey is a ceiling raiser more than a floor raiser. So it's really hard to say, definitively right now when the Thunder are the 4th worst team in the NBA. So it's hard to say, but I think at the least they found 4 starting level or rotation players in this draft, which is very high praise, and that's almost impossible in this era.
Now, I do want to ask you a question from our mailbag on Wednesday. Having watched their rookie season, at this point right now, is Josh Giddey or Jalen Green the better prospect?
First of all, how dare you ask me such a difficult question? It's hard. It's the hardest part about this for me is Jalen Green's on a tear right now. As we're recording this is Thursday. Like, he just came off I want to say it's like a 30-point game. I know he's been on fire. That's all I know. And since the All-Star break, he's averaging just an absurd number. He's putting up 30 points a game, and he's averaging 20 points a game since the All-Star break on 47%. Jalen Green, I think, had the absolute highest ceiling in the draft. So the fact that he is kind of hitting makes me want to say him. But it's also hard because when was the last time Josh Giddey played? Like, if Josh Giddey was playing right now, let's be real, he'd probably be putting up crazy numbers too. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say Jalen Green because the athletic 3-level scoring upside guy probably takes the cake every time. But it's nothing against Giddey. I think on a very real level, if they're going against each other, Giddey could manipulate Green a lot more than Green could manipulate Giddey, for whatever that's worth.
I love it. Yeah, that was a tough one for me to answer too on Wednesday. And you know how much I love Jalen Green in last year's draft class.
Yeah, that was part of why I was scared to answer this.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting topic on Wednesday. You can go back and listen to. But coming up, let's preview the Final Four featuring my Kansas Jayhawks. But first, I want to tell you right now, my good friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15. Get 15% off your next order. Built Bar is fantastic. Covered in 100% real chocolate on the outside, and even have a Puffs option, which is 100% marshmallowy goodness with chocolate on the outside. low calorie, high protein. It's awesome for you on no matter what diet you're on. It's great pre-workout, post-workout as a meal replacement or a snack. Most Built Bars have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Richard, today, what Built Bar are you grabbing of all their delicious flavors?
While you were doing this, I was this close to standing up because the word Built Bar stood out. And I swear this is not like, some scripted thing or anything what I'm about to say. But I'm going to the gym after this, and I was getting a little bit hungry. And I wasn't sure how much time I had, so I didn't do it. But there's a cookies and cream Built Bar in my pantry right now that I'm getting right after this.
You heard it here first. I had no idea he had Built Bars on deck. I do as well. Now, here's the secret, Richard. Mine are in the fridge. That's a life hack for you. As we start to get in these hot months, well, pop those bad boys in the fridge to see if you don't like it more. But I love cookies and cream. It's my go-to as well. You can get some too. Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Joining me is Richard Stamen. You can follow him on Twitter at MavsDraft. And for your next listen, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, a recap show in 30 minutes or less of every story around the association. Richard, it's Final Four time. And the Jayhawks made it there. Granted, with one of the weakest paths I've ever seen, only having to beat Texas Southern and then Creighton and then Providence and then Miami, but still they made it there. With this Final Four, I'm going to start the conversation with Remy Martin because it's obviously somebody that you hate and that you hope never plays basketball again. But Remy Martin, if he has a really good Final Four, can he be solidified as a draftable player?
Look, I want to say yes because GMs only care about March Madness sometimes in the second round, but he's a fifth-year guy who's still averaging 9 points a game on 46% shooting. I don't think so. And he's 6 foot also. That's important to note. I don't think so. But I'm scared for what else you're about to put in my mouth because those are words I did not say.
Let's talk Final Four. You mentioned that the executives only care about the March Madness period, and now it's the biggest stage in New Orleans. Sticking on Kansas, Ochai Agbaji. He's an older player, been around a long time, having his best season ever right now. If you're the Thunder at pick 15, is that a player that you would invest in? Is that too high? Is it more pick 30? And also, in general, would you invest in him if you're the Thunder, or would you go with somebody who has higher perceived upside?
Yeah, I'd love him in Oklahoma City, especially at 15. Starting on the mocks, we're starting to see these guys, the big dogs such as Athletic, Bleacher Report, and ESPN. I think all three of them have him in their lottery. So where there's smoke, there's fire. He's definitely getting the buzz when you do well in March Madness and you've been a 40+% shooter all year, having the best free throw percentage of your career. You're going to get a lot of that. There's a lot to like with him in Oklahoma City, being the fact that a great shooter who has no dip, no hesitation in his jump shot, and then he's a beautiful cutter. Just imagine that next to Josh Giddey. That's a beautiful fit for me. And I think he starts potentially, depending on, I don't know exactly what the roster turnover will be, but in theory, he's starting level.
Look, your big board spans hundreds and hundreds of players. I want to get out of the way. And let's start with game one. Preview game one, Nova versus Kansas, and tell us, let's just say there's NBA fans listening that do not like college, hate college basketball, don't want to watch the Final Four, rather watch the NBA games. Why should they watch, though, especially for a team like the Thunder who are going to be so heavily involved in the draft? What are the names to watch again for Villanova and for Kansas in game one?
Yeah, well, if you're an NBA fan that, if you're like me, I don't like watching college basketball live unless I'm at the games personally. So I feel you, but there is no NBA on Monday, so you kind of have to. This is your problem now. But if you can put up with the excessive refs whistling, the refs do not just whistle in the meantime, but the two guys in that game, there's no one on Villanova that's an NBA prospect. Maybe Colin Gillespie, but he's probably Euro guard. The two guys are Kansas's Ochai Agbaji, like we were talking about, the shooter, cutter, athlete potential on defense. And then Christian Braun, who he's interesting. He's 6'7", give or take an inch. He's really tall. That's all I know. I've seen him up close, and good athlete. The jump shot is nice. The tools are good. The size, shooting, and cutting ability and athleticism are nice. However, watch for his tunnel vision. When he gets his sights set on the rim, he definitely is not going to pass out of that. Like, he loves taking the shot he sees. He goes, oh man, there's an opportunity. 3 people step in front. He's like, well, I already made my mind up. So that's what you got to watch with him. I think he's pretty capable elsewhere. Again, the tools are what you're investing in, but the decision-making kind of needs to improve.
Who wins that game? Kansas versus Nova?
I'd say Kansas by double digits. The Justin Moore injury. He was a borderline prospect, being a shooter at like 6'7", but I can't see them doing it. The best argument I've heard is they rally around the injury and, they try and win for him, but it's just unlikely. They're overmatched.
And then Duke against UNC. First time ever they've been in the tournament together and in the Final Four playing each other. What to watch for in that game on Saturday?
Yeah, so there's obviously the Coach K narratives, but from an NBA draft perspective, Duke has about 5, maybe 6 guys, if we're being really generous, that could be drafted. One way or another, the whole starting 5 will play in the NBA. Jeremy Roach, is the guy who could be that 6th guy. He's started in the tournament and really turned the gear on, but Trevor Keels is a little bit underrated. He has a little baby Lowry in him. Probably could be a 2nd-round pick at this point because he did get benched at the end of the season, or relegated to the bench, I should say. But he's still very capable. The jump shot will be good. But Paolo Banchero, potential number 1 pick. You probably heard all about him. Watch Mark Williams on how he defends the perimeter. I'm interested to see how North Carolina brings him out, but there's a good chance he guards Armando Bacot. If not, they might try and put him on Brady Manick, who's a stretch 5 for North Carolina.
And Brady Manick, of course, is a soft spot in Oklahoma. Does he have any NBA hopeful, any NBA chance?
Probably not. He's a good shooter, but like when you're 6'10" or 6'11", whatever size, might be almost 7 foot. But when you're that size and you offer really nothing else besides shooting, and the shooting's only like above average, it's really hard to make the league. But he'll have a nice career in Europe. I want to say that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. When I say that, that's still high praise. Playing in Europe, I don't think a lot of people realize just how good these European leagues are. They're better than they were even just 3 years ago.
Who wins that battle, UNC Duke, in the Final Four to go play my Jayhawks on Monday?
I really do want to say North Carolina gets there. I think they also kind of had an easy path. I think Duke gets there. And the Hollywood ending is going to happen. I think it's very likely.
So you're picking Duke over Kansas?
Yes.
That would just rip my heart out. I mean, that would just rip my heart out. Richard, follow him on Twitter at Mavs Draft. Any final words that don't involve Kansas losing?
Yeah, whatever I say here is going to be used against me. So at first,
it absolutely is.
Evan, which actually, wait, can we just rewind real quick to 2021? Because all last year, remember how I said about Evan Mobley? I'm like, he's a wing in a big's body. And you go, oh, and I said, like, kind of think Kevin Durant, how he's a big, like, his measurables are big, but he's not a big man. And the whole time all that was said was, oh yeah, Richard thinks he's Evan Mobley is Kevin Durant, which I never said, but maybe I might take that back. Maybe I did say those words.
Yeah, you should be claiming that take. Also, you did say those words. I have the clip of you saying them. But
hey, you know what? If you want to edit it in right now, go ahead.
But I think that a lot of people stole that take from you because I've seen it out there now a bunch with Evan Mobley. So Richard Stamen, follow him on Twitter at Mavs Draft. He'll be back next week to talk about the end of March Madness. And then we're going to get into some Player Pacific podcasts talking all about individual prospects. So until then, be good and be good to one another.